So one of the things that we're going to talk about here is, this is where I left off, is how important it is to stabilize into the trail leg and how that's what really affects transition. So let's do this. If you guys are sitting at home right now and you're sitting in a chair, or you might have a golf club in your hand or doing whatever and watching this, let's do something really fast. I want you to go ahead and stand up for just a second. And let me walk you through the feeling of this really quickly. And by the way, anytime that you're doing any type of motion training, whether it's with or without a club, or you're doing the stuff that I'm going to show you right here, this is practice. I consider practice anytime you're practicing a motion of the body. So let's practice this motion real quick, and we'll kind of do a quick experiment with the body. So when you stand up, and you can just kind of stand out of your chair and put your legs into what I call the A-frame, and just turn that lead foot out just a little bit. Okay, so now you're basically, and give me a little side bend there in your body. Now all I want you to do is keep that leg in a brace and turn, and try to keep that leg in a brace. What I don't want you to do is straighten the knee, right? Because if you straighten the knee, I'm watching myself on the screen here, it'll turn the pelvis. So watch my leg. Notice how when I turn, the leg doesn't move very much. It stays pretty stable, and I'm rotating around the leg. Now, as I do that, as I make that motion there, I feel the pressure on the inside of the leg and the inside of the foot. So it's basically creating stability on the very inside of the leg. Okay, so this is what's very, very important about the stability of the trail leg. Because here's a question I had when I was with guys talking about the biomechanics of the swing. We watch the motion of Moe's golf swing, right? You see his motion, and you see him moving his body. My question was, how is he doing that? Like, how is that happening? What parts of the body are producing that movement? And when you look at what's happening with what we call the transition, those of you that are struggling with that initial transitional move, and by the way, what that is the lower body moving as the upper body is going back, so that transitional movement. Those of you that are struggling with that are most likely struggling with the motion you made in the backswing. So watch. So my question was, when I was with the biomechanics guys, was what is making that pelvis move that direction as the body's going this direction? Like what's producing that movement in the body? And what's producing that movement is that stability on the inside of that leg, because you're pushing. Now, as you're standing there, do this with me. Push off the inside of that leg, and you'll notice you push right over into your lead foot. See that? So the push from the inside of the trail leg pushes you over. Now, try this for me. Go ahead and all you got to do is, in your backswing, shift your pelvis. See how my leg goes from that, see that A-frame? See when I shift my pelvis, now it's straight up and down. Now I want you to go up and down. Now try to push the pelvis, and you can't do it. So my point here is that if we don't get good at framing up the trail leg and building that stability, and then bracing against the inside of that leg, we cannot transition correctly. Remember on my little chart here, I was talking about the stabilizing of the body, the bracing of the body is just as important as the movement of the body. Well, you just saw it right there, because I'm stabilizing here, which allows me to then move there. It's the stabilization that allows for that transitional movement. So this right here, what you're seeing on Moe on the screen, drawing that line up his trail leg, creates a bracing. And then you're going to see that because of that, he can transition, and now he moves from that pressure, stability, moving that weight into the lead knee. Watch what happens. He comes down to that position 3. Right here at position 3, a lot of you guys ask me about this, like how much weight does he have into, like where is his weight? And I'm going to tell you right now that he has 80% of his weight. It's hard for me to say percentage-wise, but 80% of his weight is now into the lead, flex lead knee foot. So watch when I make this movement into the lead foot, all right? So when I make that movement, notice that it's like I'm stepping into a shoe. It's like I'm stepping into a shoe. See that? So I'm basically pushing myself into what? A stable lead knee. I'm stabilizing the lead knee, right? Okay, So we stabilized the backswing. That allowed us to move into the lead knee, and now we're stable on the lead knee. This is important. Why? Well, watch this. Look at Moe in this position 3 here. And I can back him up a little bit, but as he's coming down into the downswing, this is where, if you measure it, most of the golf swing speed is being produced. This is where the efficient speed is being produced. This is where you're getting the most out of the body, the most out of the club, most out of the hands. Very important checkpoint here on this position 3. But what's happening now is his lower body is actually stabilizing. So he's coming down. His lower body is stabilizing. And what he's going to be able to do now is what? What happens, and I showed you this earlier, see the lower body? It's limited. It's like, okay, it's saying, Todd, I can't go anywhere here, and my foot's down, and I can't go anywhere here. I can turn a little bit, and that's mostly the right side turning. That's why you see the knee come down a little bit. So I'm turning, I'm bracing. The only thing left to do from here is what? Arms, hands, shoulders, release. See that? So now you're going to see Moe, he hits this kind of range of motion limitation, and then it's deliver. And this is where you see the efficient speed happen. That's why when you get good at transition, you get good at lower body bracing, you can now use the speed producers of the body. That's why earlier when I was talking to you in this demonstration, this presentation, about I'm done with the speed thing, because that efficiency thing is the key answer to speed. Because if you get great at this, you can now get great at that, which is where the speed comes from. Where I see people is they're so out of position, they're out of position here, they're out of position here, they're out of position here, they're so not stable here that they can't efficiently produce speed when they need it. So this is what you're seeing with Moe here. He's in hitting position, and he's in that stable lower body and position upper body now to produce. Watch what happens from here. He basically has very, very little movement of the body here. There's a little bit of rotation, but it's mostly upper body, arms, and shoulders. And watch this. There's that release of the club. So notice the lead knee is still flexed as he extends to position 5. Notice the lead knee is stable, the foot is on the ground, and he's extended the trail arm. That was possible because of side bend and position of the lower body. And he's able to rotate as much as he wants, and that's his limitation. The club has to go to that extension, and then to position 6, which is back on plane. And notice here his foot is still on the ground. So now I want you to look at this just kind of step by step here. He's at the top of his swing. He transitions, which is a bracing of the lead leg, and now he releases the club. All right, I'm going to talk about one final thing. And just so you know, the checkpoints that I normally use, the down the line stuff, was checking that swing plane. If you're working on this motion, checking that swing plane and making sure your body's in those positions, you should start seeing that club correctly moving on that plane line. Let's talk. The final question I want to answer kind of for you, and then I'm going to take a couple questions. Is that okay? Is the swing left-sided, lead-sided, or trail-sided? And so be careful on this stuff, questions like this. And I'm throwing this out there because many of you, you'll talk to the coaches, you'll talk to us, you'll be online, we'll be with you, we'll be trying to answer questions, and it's very hard a lot of times to answer these questions through a chat or a text or whatever. But human beings have a tendency to try to put things into a limited area of understanding. So they try to say, well, it's got to be one or the other. It's got to be left-sided or right-sided. So what is it, right or left? And that's not, we all know that's not the way things work. In biomechanics, the golf swing is both left-sided, lead-sided, and trail-sided, which is left and right for me. What does that mean? So let's just go into this. The body is moving. There's parts that are moving, and there's parts that are stabilizing. So at certain times, there's your sequence question. At certain times during the swing, some parts are moving, and some parts are stabilizing for the movement. So in other words, you have the positions of your body get very important, like I mentioned before, because it's allowing you to stabilize some and keep moving others. So I'll just go through it with you. So as I go into the backswing, the lower body is turning, but it's also stabilizing. So there's that first movement. And there's the top of my backswing. So the lower body is now stabilizing. Now most of this is just upper body movement. Arms, hands, shoulders. Okay? So you're seeing lots of movement, stable lower body, upper body, arms, hands, and shoulders. Okay? So there you go. So what was that, left-sided or right-sided? So you have, right? So certain parts are doing something, certain part another. So now watch this. As I come down, I feel, and what's biomechanically happening is I'm turning, I'm stabilizing. That's the transition. I'm turning the body. See that? I'm turning the body. And when I turn the torso, okay, so how am I doing that? Well, I'm stable, so I'm able to turn the pelvis and the torso. That is moving my arm. If I turn the pelvis and I turn the torso and the arm moves, I got a question for you. Is my arm doing the movement? That's a biomechanical question. So I'm in the backswing. I stabilize. I'm turning the body. Is my arm doing the movement? And the answer is no. The torso is moving the arm. So here's my question for you. Is it left-sided or is it right-sided? And the answer is, well, you're pulling from your pelvis here is turning, and your lat and that's turning, and that's pulling the arm. That's correct. So that is a left-sided motion. So that's what's contracting and moving, right? What's the right side doing? What's this side doing? Nothing, right? So Moe said it. It's along for the ride, right? He's pulling with the left, and this is along for the ride. Love it. Good way of explaining it. Moe would tell me that all the time. So here we go. Stable, turn. Now don't move the arms. Turn the torso, but only to here, right? Now, you remember earlier when I said I'm stuck, kind of stuck, right? Guess what happens? Well, the left side just said, hey Todd, guess what? I can no longer move. So guess what has to move? The right side. See that? So what happens is it's a stabilization, a pulling of the arms, and then an extension of the right side. That's the sequence of events. I just described to you the kinematic sequence. But I just want you to know, don't try to put this in a box. Don't try to say it's all right-sided. Don't try to say it's all left-sided. It's a biomechanical movement that's based on proper positioning and proper sequencing and making sure that you do it correctly, and you'll become more efficient. Okay, 4 questions. Question number 1. At the top of the backswing, where is the club face pointing? All right, so I'm going to try to interpret this a little bit. I don't care where the club face is pointing. I care what the club face is referencing, and I'm going to explain that. So, like you might say, is it pointing towards the ground or is it pointing towards the sky? I'm going to say, is that club face matching the plane of the forearm? Okay, so so by the way, that has a lot to do with your hand position. Every time we answer these questions, I have to say, well, as long as your mechanics are correct, as long as your address and grip are correct, the top of the backswing, the club face should be planed with the back of the arm. Why? Because when I square the back of the arm to the target, the face will be square to the target. It makes a lot of sense, right? So I don't care if it's pointing, well, I don't want it to the ground because your arm will never be pointing to, the plane of the arm will never be to the ground. But I never care necessarily where the face is pointing. I care that the face is on the same plane as the arm. So when you take the club back, that club face is matching the plane of the arm. So so let me do this. Watch this. So if I take this club and I grab it in a weak position, right, and I go to the top, see, that club is heading to the ground, but that's because the grip was incorrect. Let me put that on the Graves grip here. So you can see that here's my hand position. See, I have my correct. If my hand was out of that position, right, so that's incorrect, that club's going to be pointing towards the ground and not lined up with the back of the arm. So get this correct. That's why these positions are so important. Get the grip correct. And then now, when I take that to the top, look where the club is. The club face is pointing. It's on the plane of the arm. So that's the answer to that. It's a good checkpoint though. I like that. Okay, from Z, it appears that in position 3, the back of the lead hand and club face points 90 degrees from target. How do you bring these into square so late in the swing? rotation. So watch this. So, well, I'll do it 2 angles here. So here's position 3. So at this point, I have to look at my metrics, but at this point, there's probably only about 15 degrees of torso rotation. And then, so the torso is rotating, right? And then the arm is squaring up. So it's this motion right here. It's the squaring of the arm. It's the rotation of the arm. See that? That's squaring the face. But you can't do that with just the arm. You have to do it with the proper movement, with the side bend of the body, and the proper rotation of the body squares the face. Remember I said earlier, side bend is critical to this, because look what happens if I don't have side bend. I can get this. If I have too much side bend, I get this. So side bend, and rotation square the face. And then this hand's moving like this, straight line. So it's that right there, and it's that lead arm, side bend, and then rotating of the lead arm squares the face. That's what you're calling late in the swing. I'm calling it just proper mechanics of the movement of the arm leading into the impact. I hope that helped. From Dennis R. Is raising trail foot part of impact, adding distance or something, or just a part of finish that I should not be considered part of adding distance? So here's the speed question. Here we go. So the trail foot lifting, this is how much speed I can produce with a trail foot lifting. Right? I mean, mechanically. So it's not that the foot can't produce speed. Nothing lifting can produce speed. In biomechanics, the only thing that produces speed is stability and rotation and acceleration of the body part. So the foot, by moving up and down, cannot accelerate the hands. What it can do, and the reason you see it occur in conventional golf swings, and so let's answer it from that perspective. When you see people lift their trail foot, it's because every golf swing must stabilize. So a conventional swing, for example, they have a straightening of this leg and a lifting of the foot. So that is how they produce stability. They produce stability by lifting that leg, and that foot has to lift as they rotate. But the point is that the foot lifting is not producing the speed. It's the stabilization of the straightening of the leg that stabilizes the hip. That's a necessary thing in a conventional golf swing. In our swing, it's unnecessary. Why? Because we stabilize differently. We stabilize from this. We stabilize with a braced knee and then an extension and a rotation. Same rotation, same amount of rotation, but we do it with a flex knee. Why can we do that? Because we're on a single plane. And we can flex the knee and hit the ball, whereas a conventional golfer has to lift his body. Now, both swings stabilize. That's the necessary ingredient in the formula, is that but we have to get stable. That's why that flex knee is important. What you don't want is this. What you don't want is to either become unstable and lift the foot, and that's what I see is instability, and that's a loss of speed. So no, lifting the foot is not going to help you gain speed. What's going to help you produce speed is becoming stable, brace, and limiting. That limitation, see, I'm limiting this, foot down, knee flex, but I'm not limiting upper body, and that's where your speed is coming from. So what I want you to do, I mean, the answer to that is work really hard on that lead knee, because the trail foot is a result of the lead knee, and that's going to give you speed. Now, you ask the question, okay, after you get to here, then you lift it up. Well, the speed's already done. You're not moving anymore, right? So the speed's done, so lift it up after has nothing to do with producing speed. Todd, in the address position, should we align all clubs with heel? Yeah, so that's a good question. Let me show you that one. You remember how I talked about at address where our upper body is 15 degrees open? At impact, we're about 30 to 35 degrees open, somewhere in that range. So that means that when you set up, that by the time you get to impact, the club is coming a little closer to you. So you want to set the club slightly on the heel. So you notice that when I have the club on the ground there, it should be slightly on the heel, not on the center even, and definitely not there on the toe. So we want to see it slightly on the heel. That's the setup right there of the club. And so when you come to impact, see how it comes a little closer to me and hits the sweet spot. So it needs to be every club. Yes, the answer is every club needs to be slightly on the heel.
All right, so we're going to pop these questions up. All right, first one. What is the difference between a pitch and a half full swing? What's the difference between pitch and half full swing? It's a good question, James. Basically, a pitch, and if you want to say a half swing, is basically the same thing. So let's say right now I set up over a pitch and I had the ball position in the middle of my stance. I'm going to get some elevation on this, okay? And I want to height. Because I'm not swinging at it full, I've got to get my lower body open a little bit. Now let's pretend you got up over a 7-iron and you were taking a half swing. Maybe you were going to punch underneath a tree, or you were just going to take a half swing into the green. Let's say you're hitting into the wind and you wanted to take a 3/4 to a half swing just to slow it down and not put as much spin in the ball. If you do that, you've also got to get the lower body open slightly, okay? Anytime, so listen very carefully. Anytime you're not swinging at this club full. And defining the word full is kind of odd, because if you went to a good player and say, describe a full swing, they're going to say 80% swing, meaning there's always a little bit extra, but they have a good swing that's a very consistent swing, that's a solid swing that maximizes their technique, that they get maximum speed and distance in the ball. But every good player can swing it a little bit harder, but for most time they get out of control. So people will say a full swing is basically swinging 80%. So let's say you're going to swing 50%, or you're going to swing 40%. So you're pitching it, out from under a tree, or you're hitting a knockdown shot, or whatever it is, or into the wind shot, like we talked about. You've got to get the lower body open slightly to make up for those hips not moving as much, which allows the elbow to clear. Okay. But other than that, they're basically the same. And the next question. Okay. Do you prefer looking directly in the center of the ball or look at the back of the ball? Jeff, we get this all the time. I don't look at either. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. If you're sitting there and you're looking at the ball itself, you're going to get too tied up on the golf ball. You're not. It really kind of ties up everything. Let me put it this way: you're looking at a zone. So when I sit up over top of a golf ball, I'm going to hit it. I'm not looking at a particular spot in the golf ball. I'm looking at an area. Okay, and when I make impact, the golf ball is just getting in the way. Now, if you're one of those that is very specific and you want to look at a dimple in the golf ball, which I don't know any good player that does this, but you're looking at a very specific point in the golf ball, look at the back of the ball, to start. And then you may even want to try looking at the front of the ball to help you drive through the golf ball, okay? But I'm telling you right now, if you go to talk to any good player, I guess I can put myself in that, and myself included, you don't look at a particular spot in the golf ball, you're looking at a zone, you're looking at an area. In fact, most players, I'll be honest with you, will focus almost as much on their club head as they do the golf ball. So when I set this up, so let's say I'm looking at a shot here. I'll tell you, I don't do this so I'm hitting a golf shot, but I'll tell you what I'm looking at. Let's say I'm going to hit a pitch. Now I set this club down and I look down. I'm not looking at my ball right now, I'm looking at the grooves of the club. I'm looking at the grooves of the club matching my target. Grooves of the club matching my target, look at the zone, keep my head down, go. I'm not looking at a particular spot in the golf ball. Last thing I want to do is look at that golf ball, have my face open or closed. I'm looking at the club head. I look at the club head probably more than I do the golf ball. In fact, I can tell you I do that. Now, I don't follow the club head going back, but when I take the club head back, I don't go from the club head to a very spot in the ball. I'm just looking at a zone and make impact. Okay? Got next question? Is it okay to open your stance very slightly to get a better peripheral view of putting line? Absolutely, Dave. And so when I do short game schools, or even a little bit in normal schools on 3-day and 5-day, we'll talk about this a little bit, but short game schools, we talk about this extensively. Okay? That's the hole. So the hole's set out over here. Okay, let's pretend we're on the golf green, or we can do this inside too. If I have a putt, and so I'm setting up over a putt right now, and I'm 5 feet from that hole. When I sit up over this putt, I'm looking down, my head is looking down, okay, like we just talked about. I can look at any part of the golf ball or in the zone, but as I'm looking down, I see the hole out of my peripheral vision. So I can see right now, I can see the entire ring, I can see the entire hole in my peripheral vision. Now, if the further you get back, the less peripheral vision you'll have. And you want to have that peripheral vision because it helps you maintain the line. It helps you maintain the feel when you put your head back over top of the golf ball. That peripheral vision is good. Now, peripheral vision, and eye doctors will probably argue with me on this, it's not affected a lot by eye dominance, but most people with certain eye dominance are comfortable or not comfortable looking or feeling the hole out of the peripheral vision. Meaning, if I was right eye or left eye dominant, peripheral vision kind of stays the same. But here's the deal. And we'll talk about this for a second. Let's say I step over this 5-foot putt, and I can see on my peripheral vision. Most people can see the hole out of their peripheral vision from 12 to 15 feet. Past that, we start losing that. That's okay. But let's say we have a 5-footer and you don't see it well in your peripheral vision, or you want to see a little bit better. This is what you can do. There's 2 ways to do this. Number 1, we can get a slightly open stance, okay, as long as our shoulders stay square. Because if you get a slightly open stance, but your shoulders follow, so I get up over a ball, let me do it this way. And let's say I get a slightly open stance, but my shoulders follow that open stance, okay, I'm going to cut across this putt, or I'm going to have to do some type of compensation to get my hands down the line. So I can get the open stance, but the shoulders have to come back to square. The problem with that is when the shoulders come back to square, it basically brings your head back to the original position. Okay, so let me explain this again. Jack Nicklaus, greatest golfer of all time, he putted with almost a 45-degree open stance. Okay, did a great job. I putt with a slightly open stance, but my shoulders are square. As Jack's were, as all good putters are, your shoulders are square. That brings your head back to normal, because if you open your shoulders, yes, your head moves, but it goes with your shoulders. Remember, your head 99.9% of the time is going to follow your shoulders 100% of the time. So here's something better to do. Instead of opening the stance to get a better peripheral vision, tilt your head slightly. So right now, the ball's underneath my lead eye, okay? It's in front of my nose. Just take, ball's in the same position, not moving ball position, but just turn your head slightly. So right now, I'm just turning my eyes slightly to the hole. Just a little bit. Now, the ball stayed in the same position. It's not like it moved back. But if I turn my head slightly, now I can see the hole under my peripheral vision a little bit better. And you can test this. Sit up over it. If you don't see it or see it, just turn slightly and see if you see it a little bit better. A slight turn in the head, to me, is much better than a twist of the body to help, because most of the time the shoulders get open and you're going to have a lot of problems cutting the ball or getting the hands down the line. Okay? So, again, work on that. Test it. Go inside, put a throw hole down, put something down, see if you can see out of your peripheral vision. I'm not talking look out of your peripheral vision. You should be able to see that and that helps you a lot, again, in speed control and line. It helps a lot. Let's go to the next one. Right. I would love a clear view of the direction of the trail wrist folds and flexes in the backswing and in position 3 for chipping, and how that relates to the full swing. Okay, Jeff, it's the same. So the way the hand cocks, hinges, folds, releases, all the above, is the same. So, and this is kind of some advanced work with chipping, but we'll talk about it. Most people view a chip as a short little golf shot that just, 10 yards, 15 yards, get on the green, roll it out, or you're on the edge of a green. But a chip can be a much longer shot. In fact, I'm going to put one on here, and I'm going to hit the same fundamentals that we promoted in a chip over this shot. So I'm going to set up, choking down, and I'm going to hit the shot. And if I hit that with a full swing, probably would have gone, or with a golf ball on a golf course, if I'd hit that with a real golf ball on a golf course, that probably would have gone close to 100 yards. Okay? Probably close to 100 yards, maybe a little further. Okay, so, I keep having my watch go off. I toss it to the guys. Okay, I must be saying Siri in there somewhere. Okay, so when I hit that shot, that right there is a hard, long chip. Now, as I hit that longer shot, my hands obviously have to go further back in the backswing. So, just like that pitch, just like a full swing, as I hit that shot, when I start taking the club back, my hands are going to cock and hinge up. The lead hand is what cocks up, so I'm going up with the lead hand. The trail hand is hinging. Okay, so my trail hand is hinging up. Okay, I'm cocking and hinging the hands up. Now, as I cock and hinge the hands up, that's what gets the toe of the club up. Or you could say vice versa. The toe of the club goes up as I cock and hinge properly. Cock and hinge properly, the toe of the club goes up. That's why we talked about chipping and pitching. We said when the club gets to waist high, that toe of that club should be up. Okay? If you get to that position, that toe's down, you're either not moving your shoulders right or you're not cocking and hinging the hands correctly. So now, I take the club back, I cock and hinge the hands. I go back to impact. As I go to impact, I'm starting to unhinge the trail hand through impact. The lead hand is staying flat. It's not completely unhinged. It's unhinging through impact until we get to release. Full release is full unhinging and uncocking of the hands up until finish, okay? So, even in a chip, that's why I said I don't like the word chip or pitch. And the reason I don't is I want a low shot that goes a long way. A low shot that goes a long way, I'm going to hold that angle through impact. That's going to keep the club de-lofted. It's going to go a long way. Guys, it's the same way if you're hitting a shot into the wind. I mean, if I was hitting a full swing, and again, I'm not covering the full swing here, but I can talk to this topic. If I'm hitting a full swing into the wind, and I want to hold the angle off, because if I release it, it's going to go too high. So I want to keep this, say it's blowing 40 into my face. I'm trying to keep this ball down. I'm going to take the club back. I'm going to hold off the angle. I'm going to hold off the finish, because if I release, that club's going to go high. It's going to take off. I want to hold off and de-loft the club. So if I was hitting a shot into the wind, okay, I mean, I'm held off that angle. I went through the same thing. I held off the angle there. I didn't fully release it through. I held that angle off, which is basically a long chip, okay? Or, you know, that's why, and pull it up online. If you guys want to see this, look at Tiger Woods' stinger, or look at, go online and look at the word stinger. You know, we used to talk about Tiger Woods' stinger a lot. It's a shot when you get on a tee box, and all pros do this, but it became very popular with Tiger. He'd get on a tee box, and he'd be really nervous. You know, maybe it's a really tight hole, and he wanted to hit an iron off the tee, or even a hybrid off the tee, and keep it low, so it wasn't up in the air, it wasn't getting up in the wind, and a very controlled shot that's low and ran out. And if you watch and you see that stinger hit the ground, and whoo, it would take off rolling. So he's trying to control that shot. Usually it's a really tight hole, or a hole into the wind, or a hole he's very nervous. In fact, if you talk to touring professionals or really good players, you sit there and say, describe the shot you hit when you're under a ton of pressure in a really tight hole. Most of them will tell you they're going to a stinger type shot. A stinger is the same thing, is a shot that we cock and hinge up, and we hold the angle through. We hold off on that release to keep that ball low and keep that ball running. You good?